It is great to be back on this stage in my new, or rather new-ish, role as the head of CTIA. As a regular attendee of this event over the years, including my very first speech on wireless way back in 2012, it holds a special place in my heart. Getting to represent this remarkable industry, as we just heard from Lara, and this organization is truly an honor. Now, if you're a frequent and unfortunate visitor to my X feed, or Twitter, for those of you who don't keep up with the kids, you know that among the many, many things that I post about, I often try to capture historic moments that happened on this date in history. As it happens, October 14th is rather rich soil for the theme I want to explore today. For example, on this date in 1947, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier, ushering in the supersonic age. It was a feat that was considered unthinkable for most of human history. Chuck Yeager was him, as we now say, and his feat was all about technological superiority, human ingenuity, and a powerful desire for the United States to lead. And sometimes innovation brings us things we didn't even know we needed. As it happens, in 1977, the Atari 2600 went on sale in the United States. Speaking personally, and perhaps for some of you of a certain age, as a kid in the late 1970s, I never conceived that I might want, or perhaps more accurately need, to command a missile battery, or to direct Pac-Man's consumption of digital wafers. But I did, as did countless millions more. And that Atari console ushered in an era of gaming that persists to this very day. Well, we're now entering a new age of exploration. Technology is poised to transform every corner of our lives, but none of it, not a single byte, works without wireless. Spectrum, in particular, is a key driver of innovation, not just for the mobile industry, but for adjacent technologies like artificial intelligence, the cloud, fixed broadband, and much more. And history tells us that when America leads in wireless, it doesn't just change industry, it changes the world. And so to me, perhaps no better example hits the mark than healthcare. From early intervention treatment for strokes to run-of-the-mill telehealth visits, entrepreneurs are leveraging wireless technology to solve real problems for real people. Take, for instance, a company called Doppel, D-O-P-L. We were introduced to them earlier this year. Led by innovator Ryan James, this new company provides ultrasounds via 5G to remote clinics, giving patients comfort and care in new and novel ways. As a son of two rural doctors in Kansas, this is exactly the kind of innovation that excites me about where our industry, where our country is headed. History has taught us that when the government puts in place a policy framework that incentivizes innovation, entrepreneurs will use those building blocks to build, to create, and to lead. Now, there's a reason why America led the world in 4G. There's a reason why the app economy as we know it developed on our shores. And there's a reason why the United States benefits from tens of billions of dollars each and every year in wireless capital expenditures. It's because we have made a choice in this country, a choice that traverses decades and presidencies of both parties, that we want the United States to be the best home for capital, for talent, and for innovation. And this story is still being told today. As I mentioned, Spectrum remains a critical tool in the toolbox. And we've made major progress this year when it comes to the airwaves. In this regard, I want to commend and thank President Trump, the chairman of the Senate Commerce Committee, Ted Cruz, and the chairman of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, Brett Guthrie, for insisting that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act include a keen focus on wireless policy. In particular, it restored the FCC's auction authority after it unfortunately and inexplicably lapsed 2 years ago. And for the first time in over a decade, it included a roadmap for future commercial spectrum access. We are grateful to these and other elected officials for not just trying, but doing. They are putting into practice that important ethos of Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. Try not, do or do not. There is no try. And this legislation comes none too soon, for America faces a fork in the road when it comes to wireless. At the end of the first Trump administration, the United States led the world in 5G availability, and China was a distant 11th. That was no accident. President Trump expressed a bold vision. He declared, and I quote, "The race to 5G is a race we will win." I remember it well because I was standing next to him when he said it. The president bet on wireless innovation back then, and the wireless industry delivered. Well, fast forward, and today, China leads in 5G availability, and America has fallen to third. And that, too, was no accident. To be sure, the wireless industry has continued to invest massive amounts of capital, but as a nation, we fell behind because we did not act with urgency. Well, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act is a clear repudiation of policy inertia that we've seen in recent years. And we once again have a chance to empower American entrepreneurs and to benefit wireless consumers. Now, you'll notice that I'm not saying that we will empower entrepreneurs, simply that we have a chance to empower them. And that's because progress is not the same as endpoint. That is to say, identifying bands and setting an ambitious target is not the same as making spectrum available. President Trump, Senator Cruz, Representative Guthrie, and others set the goal. They set our sights on America's wireless potential. That was leadership. Now, we need to convert that potential to reality. We need to execute. It's like that classic Seinfeld episode, one of my favorites, where Jerry attempts to rent a car. If you recall, he gets to the counter, and the agent says they have a reservation in his name, but they don't have a car for him. And as Jerry explained in words that resonate today, you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to hold the reservation. And that's really the most important thing, the holding. Well, in our world, Congress calling dibs on 800 megahertz of spectrum is nice, but it's making a reservation. Holding a reservation requires us to clear spectrum, to auction it, and to do this in a timely way. And that's really the most important part of the public airwaves, putting it to the highest valued use for the benefit of all Americans. Now, the task for all of us, industry, regulators, and policymakers alike, is to hold this reservation. More than most, I understand the challenge that lies ahead, particularly for the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr. During my own time in that role, we pursued an aggressive spectrum agenda, one that required us to devote substantial resources to set and hold groundbreaking auctions. Well, Chairman Carr has the same mindset, but in spades. He has already made clear that, as he put it, America's spectrum leadership is part and parcel of our geopolitical leadership. And he has repeatedly taken initiatives to bring spectrum into the commercial marketplace and advance U.S. leadership. Now, to be clear, I will not always agree with Chairman Carr. In fact, in some cases, I promise you, I will actively oppose him. In particular, pay attention to Week 9 of the NFL schedule, when his fantasy football team plays mine. I fully intend to crush him like a grape. But putting aside that interregnum for fake sports, we are very lucky to have him at the helm of this country's premier communications agency. And the same goes for the entire team the president has assembled and entrusted to execute on his ambitious spectrum agenda. Director Kevin Hassett and the staff at the White House Economic Council, for instance, have been laser-focused on forward-thinking spectrum policy. At the NTIA, Administrator Ariel Roth has already made a mark on spectrum policy, building on her excellent record at the Senate Commerce Committee. And I've personally met with many other officials from the Commerce Department to the Pentagon who are constructively engaged in implementing the president's bold vision. The bottom line here is that we are in excellent hands. And for our part as the industry, we owe it to these policymakers to give them viable options on the path forward. We need to help them find places where bands with global harmonization and attractive propagation characteristics can unlock consumer value. And to move forward, we need to keep all pathways open. After all, when Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, they didn't say, here's exactly which bands get auctioned. What they said was put all future licensed spectrum options on the table. We can't win the game if we keep taking bands off the table. And since we're in Vegas, I'll describe this in terms of roulette. We need to keep in play every band that is not foreclosed by Congress in order to maximize our odds. Whatever the situations, whatever the claims, the question now is, what is the best solution for America's technological future? What is in the public interest today and into the future? And if we want to get to 800 megahertz, and we have to, that is the law after all, We can't walk up to this roulette wheel, bet on a single number, and just hope for the best. We need to look at all of the options, analyze the economics, clear the right bands, and play to win. And the good news in this regard is that, unlike betting here in Vegas, betting on spectrum, if we do it right, is a sure thing for American leadership in wireless innovation. And then, as the spectrum starts flowing, we need to build. And that brings me to infrastructure. To build smart, to build efficient, to build fast, we need reform. We need to modernize infrastructure rules. We need to make it easier to build wireless infrastructure across this great land. Chairman Carr and the FCC are already off to a great start here, thanks in part to his ambitious Build America agenda. This forward-thinking agenda will let us build faster and smarter with less burdensome and more predictable regulations. Taken together, these and other infrastructure reforms will make for a more successful, more connected country. And along the way, they will help create jobs, to promote competition, and to drive growth for many adjacent industries. For when we give wireless the tools to succeed, other technologies, like AI, like cloud, even satellite, all of these and more have a chance to thrive. And with that comes an end to my own time at the metaphorical tables. Thanks very much to Lara and GSMA, and thanks to all of you. We stand at the vanguard of great opportunity, not so much at the roulette wheels outside, as in the wireless industry here at home. I look forward to pursuing these opportunities alongside you. Let's get it done. And I'm confident we will get this done with the leaders who are driving us forward. And I can think of no better example of such a leader than our next speaker. Please welcome to the stage Verizon Business CEO and the new chairman of the board of CTIA, Kyle Malady. Well, Kyle, it is great to be with you. Welcome to Vegas. The last time we had a chance to chat like this at our 5G Summit in Washington, you talked a little bit about Verizon's strategy for AI and how the businesses that you were involved with are transforming. Can you give us an update on how things stand and how you see the future?
Yeah, first, thanks for that speech. That was great. You and Laura did a great job, and a lot of space in that one. But for us right now, thinking about the future, AI is a fundamental part of what we think is going to spur, she said $3 trillion. I like that number.
That's a big number.
Of business growth. I'm sure we all like that. But AI is going to obviously play a large role in it. For us, we think about it in kind of 4 different ways. First of all, power, space, and cooling is sexy again. As I told people before, I've been around the business a long time. It necessarily hasn't been sexy. It's just something you need to do to get your business done. And then fiber. So you got power, space, cooling, real estate, fiber. Those are all things that telcos have. And those are things that we can leverage investments of the past to bring forward to help spur and go quicker on the AI front. So web scalers and everybody else working on these technologies, we can help them get to market faster and, as you say, help innovate quicker and quicker time to money. The other thing, though, that is often overlooked, and you did touch on it in the talk before, I think telecoms have a role to play in making the AI world a little bit more seamless, because we've grown up in a situation where people are talking to people. We've had standards-based technology that allowed people to do that across different platforms. I think the same thing might happen in an AI world. You're going to have bots talking to bots. You're going to have agents talking to agents. And who's going to where the rules of the road? How are they going to work? Are they just going to kind of spring forth in the internet, or will they be standards-based, or what have they? So it's early days there, and I think that's going to be a whole other interesting thing for us to work on.
Now, that's a great way to set the table. And to dive a little deeper, obviously, as the head of Verizon Business, you've got a vantage point that looks over all of these industries. Are there particular verticals, manufacturing, healthcare, whatever, that are embracing this challenge and opportunity of AI in a way that you think is promising?
Yeah, I think, well, there's a few places. First of all, just basic smartphones and devices that we see today. You can see a lot of AI in there, not only from the chips, but the applications that are being made. You can see people working on new applications that go to just the basic smartphone and what have you. So that's an area we see innovation. But in terms of verticals, I think manufacturing has really been a bright spot, especially when we look at the private 5G networks we've been putting in. So marrying up private 5G networks along with the AI capabilities and robotics has really been an unlock. And it goes back to having licensed spectrum. So when you have licensed spectrum, we find CIOs are more willing to bet on putting mission-critical applications in manufacturing. You brought upon healthcare. I think that's going to be a huge one going forward. And you pick Kansas, and I know you're a fan of Kansas. So
some say the great state, some say the greatest state.
I understand. So a lot of opportunity there. Especially we spend a lot of time with the VA and other organizations like that trying to figure out how we can help with communications and platforms. And I definitely see a ton of opportunity in AI for that. But you need to have communication. You need to have the connectivity, and you need to have the platforms, and that's what we feel we can be good at.
Yeah. Just to burnish that point a little bit more about spectrum, can you just describe why there's urgency now? I mean, obviously there's been a lot of spectrum activity over the last decade. Why this 800 megahertz pipeline is important, and why execution sooner rather than later matters?
I mean, at the end of the day, our whole industry is built on the foundation of the spectrum. It's like you're in real estate, but there's no land to have, right? I mean, it doesn't work. And the insatiable desire and demand for capacity in these networks, I mean, since day one, carriers have always been worried about capacity since day one. And if you give us enough capacity, then we can help build the ecosystems and platforms that allows small businesses, like you mentioned, to be able to grow. And it becomes less expensive, it becomes more economic. You open up the platform for a lot of people to develop new and interesting things. And so if you don't have the spectrum, you get capacity constrained and you can't do these kind of things. So it's super important that we got the authority back. It's super important that we got 800 megahertz, but you said it rightly. We need to execute. And it's not only now, we need to execute now, but you brought up China as well. Even before 5G, we worry inside of Verizon that we kind of live a little bit hand to mouth, and as an industry. And this has become such an important industry to the GDP and America and the world, frankly. I think we need to have a better plan for longer term on what we're going to do, and start to work now and figuring out what it's going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now, so we're not just kind of always scrambling at the last minute. So for me, it's really two things. It's the 800, figuring out the best way to do that and utilize that, and then also having a longer term vision of what we want to be.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of longer term vision, I want to turn to private networking. And Verizon's had some major announcements this year with FIFA, with Thames Freeport. I thought you might give a perspective on how you see that developing and what the trend line for the overall industry in terms of private networking is going in terms of network slicing and the like.
Sure. Well, I think for us, once again, you go back to AI, and I've always been a believer, you get a lot of tangential technologies coming together and you can make a good soup. I mean, if you talked about app economy before, you talk about video on phones. If you go back in the day, you might have had one technology or two technologies, but you needed three to hum together to make it work. And to bring up FIFA for good. I remember we made a World Cup work on a regular kind of like flip phone decades ago, and we were putting the World Cup on it, but it was unwatchable because you couldn't see it because the screen was so bad, right? But then you came up with OLED technologies and small vector graphic, other technologies. And now you're able to watch it in perfect color, just better than a TV. My kids will sit there, they'll watch their smartphone more than they would a TV, right? So all these technologies came together to make that use case happen. And now with one good use case in what we're doing private networks is, remember back in the day, you'd go into a stadium and you'd try and see something, or you'd try and see a score, or even if you're doing your fantasy football stuff, you're in a stadium, you can't see what's going on. But now because of 5G, millimeter wave, and other massive amounts of capacity we could put in, now you can actually stream videos when you're in there. And that's something FIFA's very, very interested in, so that's why we're working with them. So we can have private 5G network in there, people get a great experience, along with other things. People are going to come all around the world to come here to the United States and North America and watch these games. So we want to make sure everybody, when they visit America, has the best experience possible. But the bigger thing for me, it's early days in private 5G networks. We see a lot of good traction for people who have really mission-critical applications they need to run. And they're starting to get more and more comfortable with this and seeing that they can get an ROI on it. So it's early days, but I can see this in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years really becoming a kind of a de facto way you run factories and other places of business.
Yeah. By the way, not to digress, but I have to say one of the things I'm always telling my kids, because they're used to watching a lot of this high-definition video on any screen they happen to be on as well, is in our day, you only had 3 broadcast channels, and it was a grainy picture, and you had to hold the rabbit ears just so. It is simply astonishing how the consistent theme of wireless, ever since Marty Cooper made that first seminal phone call in 1973, it was just constant innovation. And I mean, I think some people think, oh, well, 5G or wireless has kind of played itself out, but it seems to me that we're just at the vantage point of a huge amount of innovation in this space, that the best is yet to come, even if people don't recognize it in the day-to-day.
Of course, I mean, it's always been true, right? I remember I tell stories back at work. When I started, like in '80s, I remember we built like the 80 cell site or 79 cell site in our network, and I thought, wow, how many more do they need? Like 20? Like they get 100, and then we'll be done, right? What am I going to do for a job? And here you go. Like we continue to build massively and spend billions and billions of dollars to continue to make it better. And I just see once again, if we continue to innovate and give people the currencies that they can build and spend R&D and come up with new and exciting things, the United States can continue to lead the world in the innovation with this. And there's talk about 6G now. Typically, these Gs last 10 years or so. We're in 5 or 6 year of 5G, so it's time to start thinking about what 6G could be. But I think we really need to think hard, marrying the spectrum along with the technology that could be in 6G, along with other things like AI. So when we do hit the ground running with 6G, like we're totally running.
Yeah. Can I tease that a little bit? Why do you think mobile is one of the critical platforms for AI development? Some might see them as siloed and separate, but I know you and I share the view that they are inseparable.
They're inseparable. This device is who you are, right? I mean, what other device is there out there that is you? I mean, you could think about different ways you put your health record on this, and say you fall over and you get knocked out, and EMS can get it, and this is you, right? So, and the world's going to go from big, expanse, shotgun approach to be very, very narrow with AI. And it doesn't get any narrower than with this kind of device. And what we're seeing is more other type of devices, like you see Meta with the glasses and other things. There's going to be new devices. AI also allows you to interact with devices in a much, much different way than we were used to before. I think that's going to change the game and lead to different kind of devices, wearables and so forth, and really be, I think, a boon for IoT. I think IoT, the next turn on IoT is going to revolve around a lot about AI and RedCap chipsets.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly an exciting future. I guess I would just simply close with, how do we secure that future? And in particular, what do you think policymakers, regulators, and others in government need to do to put in place those building blocks for you and others to be able to innovate on this platform?
Honestly, you hit on two, obviously the spectrum, and then just making it easier to build. Like, I don't think anybody in the industry has any notion that it's going to be easier to build here than it would be in China. I mean, that's just not the way the system's set up, right? It's not going to work that way. But I think there's other things the governments can do. What I worry a lot about is the disparity between what I see going on in the federal side of things and I see in the state side of things, and then the things that are going on there. And I just worry if those constituencies aren't aligned to help us drive the business, then we're just going to be caught up in a quagmire, and we will not innovate, and we will not get the right spectrum out there, and we won't get the right regulations to allow this wonderful, wonderful industry to continue to innovate and help the American people.
Well, it's remarkable that we've made so much progress to date, but I'm quite confident that thanks to, in part to your leadership, that we're going to see great things coming in the future. So thanks so much, Kyle, for this perspective.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Have a good show, everybody.